Absolutely not. I was so like happy about her. I remember when she first blew up in the manga and everyone was so excited on Twitter and they're like, yo, look at her. She got melanin. She's kicking butt. Like, and I was like, oh, she's awesome. I want to play her, on the down low. But I wasn't like, you know, I hadn't had the opportunity to like audition with then Funimation at the time. So I didn't think I would get it, but I was like, oh, she's cool. I like her a lot. So her being as popular as she was did not surprise me. I was an honor because Echidna was like really hard in the best way. Because I feel like I was still figuring out how to do like ADR, like dubbing and looping and matching the lip flaps and acting and all that stuff. I feel like that was a crash course. And also like my first time playing an antagonist. And she was such an interesting antagonist. And so I, to have her be recognized, I guess, as some of my best work, that meant a lot. Mm, big three. Film and Alchemist. I think One Piece is starting to get up there for me. And probably Even of the East is my third. And which world? Hmm, that's hard. I think I'd want to be in a magical girl world, so probably like Sailor Moon or something. That'd be cool. Speaking of, going ahead.
Um, this is going to be a little bit of a water is wet question, but I'm going to follow it up with something. Um, you're a huge advocate for diversity and mental health,
Yes.
both in front of the screen and behind the scenes. Why do you? Why is this so important to you? Which is the water is wet question. But what resources do you recommend for artists up and coming who might not know there are these resources out there to help them?
Mm, interesting. Uh, I think it's important because I remember being a kid and there was a lack of representation that was very evident. Um, and I wanted to see myself in stories, but I never would. Like, I used to pretend I was Hermione Granger because she felt like me, personality wise, but also she didn't look like me. And I remember That's So Raven, and I was like, oh my gosh, Raven. And I was so excited because she looks like me, right? Um, and but I was very aware of the lack of representation as a kid, just watching stories, and then when I became aware of voice acting, especially, I was like, oh, there's not a lot of folks behind the scenes that look like me. Um, so I know what it's like to not see yourself on screen and behind the scenes, and how that can kind of affect what you think is possible for you. So for me, that as well as mental health, because I feel like that goes hand in hand in a way. Those are very important things. In terms of resources, though, I don't think I have anything immediate that I can think of. I'm very much in support of like reaching out to friends and being open with your emotions because I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So I guess not being afraid to, be honest about how you're feeling. Like if you're working on a show, for example, and you're like, hey, I'm having an off day, can we take it easy or whatever, like not being afraid to advocate for yourself, like I think that's important to do. Oh my gosh. Oh, well, I said that I liked to be Hermione Granger when I was a kid. It was a big one. And so I loved the idea of stories and losing myself in my imagination. And but my first love was writing. And that's how I kind of fell in love with storytelling and what it could do with characters and what they can portray and make you feel. But I still liked acting. I just never pursued it because one, I didn't see folks that looked like me, and two, I had terrible social anxiety. So I didn't really get into that until I was writing fan fiction because I was that person. Yes,
Mhm.
UGX and Full Alchemist were my fandoms back then, and I was writing fan fiction, and I had a friend who he was writing fan fiction also, but then he also liked to do voice acting, like fan dubs and stuff. And I'm like, what's that? How do you do that? So I remember auditioning for like back in the day on YouTube. There was when there was video responses. Oh my gosh, there was Fanime that folks would have, which is basically like Sailor Moon knockoffs or whatever. And I would like audition for it, and that was really fun. Um, and I just started watching more dubs, appreciating the cast, appreciating the work, trying to mimic it to, because it was interesting to listen to, and especially the performances. Like, how do I sound like that? And I did that for so long, kind of on and off through my teenage years, because I started when I was 10, maybe. I think I was 10 years old. And yeah, once I kind of started there, I eventually met some aspiring animators and game developers in the indie community, and I helped them with their work, because they had some fun ideas, and it was cool to see something exist from the ground up. So I got to voice act for their stuff, and that was really fun, and I fell in love with it even more. And eventually I got paid for it, but sometimes they're like, here, you want some money? And I'm like, sure, okay. I won't say no. And I guess I was in that space for so long. Like, I started getting anime auditions. One of my first anime auditions was Komodo Friends, which was my first like anime role. And I booked that. I was very surprised. Flew over to Texas, fell in love with being in the booth because I'd never been in the booth before, like being directed, and I loved it. It felt so much like home. So, it was drawing me more and more. And then I got Ruby, and I was like, oh shoot, because Ruby, I remember when that first came out. So to be a longtime fan and then voice in that show many seasons later, it was like, wow, maybe I can do this. And I guess one thing led to another, and now I'm here. I feel like no matter what, and you don't even need to be an actor, like if you are doing good work or if you are just a part of like some legacy project, I'll think of like Very Odd Parents recently as an example where, it's getting some hate just for featuring a black character as the main character. And it's like, you just gotta deal with it. Like, I already knew I didn't know the outcome of what was going to happen, but I already knew that there would be some opinionated folks. So I just kind of took a step away from social media, made the announcement, bounced, and I was like, okay, cool. That's fun. And everything that transpired after that was, I spoke to my support group and spoke to my fiance and kind of vetted things, but I tried not to internalize so much because I feel like these issues where folks are very protective of characters that don't necessarily are represented well, like I feel like that is just them not being used to the times, I guess. And so for me, it's like, oh, it's a matter of time until, things happen correctly. And it's a matter of time until better people are in charge so that things like that don't happen. So,
Okay.
Just kind of being like, good. You know, I mean, there's a lot of projects I would have loved to be a part of. Like Full Alchemist had an amazing dub, 2003, and Brotherhood. I would have loved to be a part of any magical girl anime. Digimon is another big one where keeps eluding me, but I'd love to be a part of that one. But honestly, I'm more excited about being a part of something new and making it my own. So I know when I was a kid, I used to think about that. Like, I wanted to be Cielo Phantom Hive. for Black Butler and all that stuff. But now I'm just sort of like, I want to make something my own, you know? Relate to my personality. Oh, that's an interesting one. Hmm. The first one that comes to mind is Tama from I, the Somnium Files, because Tama, she is crazy, very sexual character, but she's the type of person who really messes with her friends. She likes to roast them and all that stuff. So, you know, she has a scene with this character where she's like, hey, do you see that lantern? And he's like, what about that lantern? And then she keeps prodding him and goading him. And then she's like, lantern these nuts! And it's like, this is something I would do to my friends, just like mess with them in the most basic way possible. So I think that one is a big one. You were right there in the back.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I got very excited when you said that you used to write fan fiction, because I too am a fan fiction writer.
Let's go.
Let's go. So I just have to ask, what do you think about this kind of new era we're moving into, where fanfic writers like Ali Hazelwood are stepping actually into the mainstream, being picked up for like movies and books of their own, and seeing fanfiction evolve to not be this kind of like secret thing that we do, but like being proud as fanfic writers?
It is so interesting. Like, I read fan fiction more sparsely now, but you know, to see folks actually publish their stuff, to see like, I think the earliest example was like 50 Shades of Grey. That was like a Twilight fan fiction or whatever. And it's like, huh, that's so interesting. Because I feel like there's so many good writers in fan fiction. So some that honestly are probably better than the actual published ones. So to see that be recognized and to see this increase of like fan work being, I guess, acceptable as professional work, like I love that. I think it's really cool.
Because it's such an important part of fandom.
It
It was fan fiction and zines that saved Star Trek, that saved Star
Exactly.
Wars, and carried it. And it's so, especially being piloted by women, queer women, women of color. Like, it was women who carried fandoms for so long.
100%. I mean, I feel like that's the reason that we have conventions in the first place. Just people who are excited about these fandoms, and people who, you know, they love to get together and do pictures and here's my ship, look at my ship, you know, making out and all that stuff. I think, yeah, fandom is such an important part of like, I think any piece of media. So if you have a fandom that's very dedicated and wants to, you know, see all these things out of it, I think fandom is cool. So last question.
What is your favorite part about being a Black nerd and being a part of Blerd culture?
I love it. I love seeing women of color in anime and all the things. I I love how fun you know, Black people are, especially on Twitter. We make the funniest jokes, and it's just so fun. Like being at these like events, like you know, MumbleCon is very diverse, but also there's a lot of us, and it's like, oh man, this is cool. Like I love seeing this Cloud cosplayer twerk, you know, like that's fire. So I just love seeing us express ourselves and be unapologetic, and you know, it's cool because I also remember a time when it wasn't cool to be like that. I mean, for me, I just kind of did it, you know, unapologetically because I was socially awkward anyways. But to see how it's changed from like, oh, you like anime, weirdo, to those same folks being like, anime is so cool, oh my gosh, have you watched this? And it's like, that's interesting, but you know, that's cool that we've gotten to that point where we're cooler than the cool kids.
All right, that's the end of our interview.